Hello and welcome to Yoga Chats brought to you by Samadhi Yoga Studios in Dublin, Ireland. My name is Fiona and I am a yoga teacher trainee in Samadhi this year, and I will be your guest host today on Yoga Chats. So today we have a very special guest, and that is of course the main man himself, Greg Walsh. Greg is the owner and director of Samadhi. Greg, it's great to have you.
Oh, thank you, Fiona. I'm blushing slightly at that intro. Thank you for taking over the helm. I'm really happy to be sitting in the guest seat today.
Absolutely. Tables have turned.
I'm slightly nervous.
So Samadhi has been on the go since 2005, and you yourself have been teaching since before then. So take us back to the beginning. What was your journey to yoga and deciding to make a career out of it?
Yes, I was always a little curious about yoga. I remember as a kid, there was a yoga book at home. At that stage, yoga was sort of like there was a yoga book and there was a Jesus Christ Superstar LP, and there was a lot of sort of 1970s paraphernalia, which is something I kind of associated yoga with. But I was very curious about it, and I remember reading it. And to be honest, at that stage, when I was younger, what interested me was sort of the almost supernatural aspect of it, you know, the very out there, the very mystical, the very oriental aspect of it. I think I had read books about India as this place of magic and mystery, and it was that sort of fantasy in a way that had me curious initially when I was very young, and then I had dabbled with joining a few meditation groups, Buddhist meditation groups around Dublin. And then in the mid-90s, I traveled to Nepal, and I was traveling with a friend who had done yoga with her mum when she was a kid and said, we should do some yoga. I was like, oh, okay. At that stage, I was more interested in doing a Reiki course, which that would not happen now, but it was yoga won out, and we signed up for a 7-day residential yoga intensive, as you do for the first yoga experience. And what surprised me then about yoga was the pure physicality of it. Because I remember doing yoga, and on maybe the second or third day, I couldn't walk up the stairs. And I couldn't walk down the stairs. And so I had to walk up and down the stairs backwards because those muscles weren't quite so traumatized in a healthy, stressful way as the main muscles of stair walking. And that then, I guess I came back, and there was very little yoga going on in Dublin at that stage. And so I signed up for a hatha yoga course. Looking back, it was a bit crap, but I did it, and it gave me more tools. And I then started teaching. I started teaching in 99. And at that stage, I'd heard about I'd heard about a great yoga teacher called Orla Punch, who was teaching some style of yoga called Iyengar yoga. And so I had started going to Orla around that time. And then I signed up to do Iyengar teacher training. That was with a woman called Elizabeth Connolly. She's a legendary character. Elizabeth, she died a few years ago, which was very sad. But Elizabeth, we lived in the UK, lived in Cornwall, and used to fly over once a month to train us. And that was sort of how it was. To get some real yoga, an experienced yogi, you sort of needed to import them or go over to them. So that was around 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. I finished Iyengar training in 2002. Elizabeth was kicked out of the Iyengar Association because, and this sounds crazy now, but it didn't feel crazy then, but she was telling us, she was also into Ashtanga yoga, and she was telling us we needed to practice Ashtanga yoga to get better at our Iyengar yoga, to pass our Iyengar exam. And that doesn't go with the Iyengar Association because it's one or the other. And people criticize it for that, but I do understand it, because I think if you are trying to go to Galway You can get the bus or you can get the train, but you can't get both. You can't have a foot in each one, you know? And so it does make sense to me, because yoga isn't about the practice. It's not like a spin class. Yoga is about the journey, and it's about the destination. And in a way, you know, the two are, one becomes the other. And my personal take is it's most useful to use one method to go on that journey. So that's been my take. And you know that with me, Fiona, that I have a particular way, and it's not that I'm trying to get anyone else to do it, but it's what works for me. And that's all I teach, because I can only teach from what works for me. So that was sort of what got me to yoga. Do you want me to talk about opening Samadhi as well? Or have I answered your question?
Yeah, I mean, how was that experience of going through that, of opening the studio? And, you know, you talk about yoga being about the journey and not the practice. And, you know, certainly those values come through very strongly in Samadhi when you walk through the door. But how did those values shape your vision for that studio when you were setting out on that journey?
So Samadhi isn't my first yoga studio. In 2003, I opened a studio called Prana. It was opposite the Stag's Head in Dublin city centre. It was a big space, 2 large yoga rooms, and the rent was really crazy. And it didn't work. It was too much too soon. I remember in 2000, my sister is cabin crew with Aer Lingus, and she flew. Do you remember Y2K, the big drama of planes are going to fall out of the sky? And Jen was asked, will you fly? There's a flight that's flying at midnight at Y2K. And she said, I will. And they said, in return, we will give you and all of your family a flight to the USA. So I was in New York early in 2000, and I remember going to some yoga studios there. I went particularly to the Jiva Mukti yoga studio on Lafayette Street. And I walked in and I was like, oh, this is it. Oh, this is it. This is it. This is what Dublin needs, because yoga at that stage was really growing, but it was growing in school halls, and it was growing in, like very grassrootsy places like that. And there wasn't a bona fide yoga studio, particularly in the city centre. So I sort of set that as my vision. That was something I would like to do. Before that, I'd been a hairdresser for I started that in 88 after my Leaving Cert. And so I've been doing that for many years. And I was bored, to be honest, with that. To me, it felt like it was a young person's game, unless you wanted to own a salon. And if you own a salon, you work all of the hours of the day. And mind you, if you own a yoga studio, you also work all the hours of the day. But there's the cliche: if you do what you work, you'll never work a day in your life. If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. True and not true. You still get tired. But I came back and had this vision. I'd like to find a place. And I had it in my head that I couldn't do it on my own. So I connected with a pal of mine who was also into yoga. And it's funny, I remember speaking to an accountant friend at the time who said, why are you going into partnership? I don't see this as a big business. Why are you're going to split whatever meager earnings you get? And I was saying, and I realized now my reasons were vague. My reasons were confidence, really. My reasons I was giving him, well, I feel it'd be better with, 2 of us and we can. And he was saying, I'm not seeing it. If this person is great, employ them, but don't share it, because you won't have enough to share. And it was such good advice. And we tried to make it work for 2.5, 3 years. And it was really challenging, and I lost a load of money, and I closed the place up massively in debt. And I spoke to my same accountant pal. I used to speak to him now and again, and I used to speak to him regularly. He was a pal, but I used to ask advice now and again, and he'd always be like, Greg, I've told you what to do. So one time I said, look, can you give me a bit of advice? And he was like, you know what my advice is going to be? And I said, look, here's the figures. Is it done? Is it really done? And he said, oh, Greg, Yeah, the expression I said was, "Is my ship really sinking?" And he said, "Oh, Greg, your ship has sunk. It's not sinking, it has sunk. As it sank, it cracked in two. It's now at the bottom of the ocean. All of the crew have been eaten by fish."
Real Titanic scenario.
There is nothing left. And I remember leaving crying. I was like, oh my God. But I knew he was right. I knew he was right for a year. And no judgment on, like, I was eager and enthusiastic, and my business partner was eager and enthusiastic, but we just bit off too much we could chew when Dublin was not ready for something large. You know, it absolutely would have been 5 years later, but that's how it was. And I met another friend who's also an accountant, and I've always been lucky with my pals. And I said to this friend, so I met, and he said this and this and this. And she said, well, I could have told you that for ages. And I said, but what the hell am I going to do? And she said, you're going to do it again. You're going to do it on your own. You're going to do it smaller. You're going to do it better. And she said, you do this well. You just did something too large and you couldn't control it. So start really small. And I said, well, how do I do that? Like, I haven't a penny. I owe like 40 grand. How do I do that? And she said, well, what do you need? So you need, maybe you need a computer. Okay. Maybe you need rent. Maybe you need what? How much do you need to buy some yoga props? And she said, so I'm going to give you an upfront. I'm going to give you this much money. That's going to get you started. And again, I came out of that meeting crying because I was just kind of flabbergasted at when you ask for support, how people will, if they believe in you, they will give it to you. It was very humbling. And so I remember then, I said to my business partner in Prana, I can't do it anymore. I'm out. And we set out. It was all very official. We had like a business partnership agreement, and on in it we had how to get out of this, and it was you have to write it in and you have to present it to. So I did all that, and I said 6 weeks, and she said, okay, yeah, 6 weeks. So I had 6 weeks to unravel, and I found a place and it fell through, and I found another place and it fell through, and it was getting really pressurized. And in the end, I found a place that wasn't really right, and it was Upper Bagot Street. I walk by it now and again and think, you served me well. Upstairs over Insomnia. And it was a bit of a hoof for people to come from beside the Stag's Head to Upper Bagot Street. But people did, and it was tiny, and it only took 8 people. But it was really affordable, and I made it work for a few months. And then I moved to somewhere North Lots, beside the Lots pub. People listening outside Dublin, everywhere is referenced by the pub. Anyway, that fitted 12 people, and it was tiny, and it had bars on the windows, but the rent was good, and it was just me and about 3 other yoga teachers. Keep it really simple, just yoga and no fluff, no messing, but just teach yoga well, not do anything else. No Pilates, no, what else? No, like nothing but yoga. And that has sort of always been my motto since, that we just do yoga, and we just do yoga well. And I guess coming from my history of my curiosity about the wider expanse of yoga, there's always been a little bit of that in it, because I've always seen yoga as the physical practice as a means to an end. And I found in the last 2 years of the pandemic, that has been such a wonderful gift for me. And I've gotten that back from so many people, diving into the pranayama, diving into the meditative aspects, the soothing aspects, the getting back into your body aspect of yoga, rather than just treating it like a gym class. Gym class is great, but yoga is something different. I'm not knocking anything else. It's just, this is my particular area of interest. And so my goal sort of, I guess, started then with only yoga with good teachers, with good experience, who are trying to give you something of the depth of yoga, rather than just yanking you into your end of range. that's where we are now.
And that's where we are now. Truly a story of literal sweat and tears.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, like in the process, I lost my apartment and I lost a lot of stuff, but it all worked out. You know, it all came good. And I think for me, there was a real lesson in looking around, asking for advice, cooperating with people, working with others, collaborating. And, you know, about, what was it, 7 years ago, it's sort of the same kind of thing came up again on Cows Lane where we are. I'd been there since 2007. We moved there then. And in, I think, 2015, the word got out that the owners of the whole street were selling. And they wanted to sell it as one block. And you know, at that stage, the expression vulture fund was not been bandied around, but it would have been bought by an investment company, and they would have tried to maximize the yield and put up the rent. And I was like, oh, we're going to have to move out. So I did a load of fundraising. And again, I just kind of said to people, I'm a bit stuck now. I think this is not going to go well. I think we either need to buy it or we will be pushed out of it. And again, people rallied around. It was so heartwarming. It was so moving. I'm forever grateful to people. So we did it. And it's funny, I remember meeting a pal of mine, Liz, and Liz works in film and she's used to fundraising and things like that. And I was working out, well, the bank will give me, 70%. And if I sell my car, I will get this much. And if I do that, all this kind of thing. If I sell my favorite jeans or whatever, not quite, but you know what I mean? It was like, what can I sell here? And Liz said, come here, talk to me, let's have a chat. And I said, so Liz, I feel I need to raise about, I think the figure I had in my head at that stage was 60 grand. And so she said, so tell me, what are you talking about? What do you need to raise? And I said, I need to raise about 60 grand. I said, Jesus, Greg. Oh, I thought you were talking like big money. Sorry, but I don't know about you, Fiona, but 60 grand, I don't
I'll take 60 grand, Greg, if it's going.
Tell me, I know. But that was such those 5 words or whatever were, again, such a weight off me, because she said, you can do that. So let's make a plan. So yeah, you're going to sell your car and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And let's do a 3-day fundraiser event. And we did a 3-day, and all the teachers, and it was, it was no hardship, but it was so much fun. And people I hadn't seen in ages came in, and we just had a bucket there, and people just dropped money in and raised something like €10,000. It was insane. It raised exactly €9,500. Sorry, because I remember it exactly, because I was flattened by it. And yeah, I think when you do something that people enjoy, and they believe in you and they sort of trust you, they appreciate that, and they're happy to help in a moment of need. And so I am forever grateful for that, for all these moments.
Absolutely. You talk about, Samadhi, you just do yoga, but you do yoga well. And that, as well as that, incredible sense of community, is something that, the moment you walk through the doors, it's there. You can feel it in the air. And, I've been going to Samadhi for just under a year now. I can't believe that. But, as a newcomer coming through it, that was one thing that I was blown away by, was how, there were so many people there that have been coming to you and to Samadhi for well over a decade. And, what is it, do you think, that brings people back again and again for that duration of time, or to really come together in that community?
That's a really hard one to answer. I think we'd be better to invite those guys on and ask them, but I'm going to try and hazard a guess. I think perhaps I can only really speak for myself, but something I've always tried to do is not to be the teacher, to make it clear that maybe I've been doing it a little longer, but not. I've some people doing yoga longer than me, but that we're on a journey together, and each class is an exploration. And for me, it is my teaching. I try to invite people rather than teach people. Let's try this. Why don't you do that? How does that feel? So it's kind of conversational. I think people quite like that. I think Irish people quite like not being told what to do. I think the fact that, I did a survey last week, and it's really interesting, the answers that are coming out. And a few people are saying, we'd love a couple more teachers like you. Could you get more teachers like... And I sound like I'm being an arrogant sod, but there aren't many teaching since, the 90s around these days. And I think it's probably just that as well, that if you find a teacher you like, and you develop a good relationship with them, and they keep teaching, then you keep going. Mm. Other than that, I'm not sure what the secret is. But I think you're right. I think you do walk in the door, and I've little things like I've one incense, and that's what we burn. And when you walk in, and that's inspired by when I had a 10-year gathering after I finished school, and we all went back to the school, and I walked in and I was like, oh my God, it smells the same. I think of all of the senses, smell is so triggering. And so I want people to walk in and go, oh yeah. And then, it's not anything else. And this absolutely, in professional terms, works against us. That it makes so much sense these days to rent it out as hot desks during the day or something. But you would walk into, probably coffee stains on the floor, and the teachers would be running around tidying up paperwork or whatever. I do love that you come in and you just feel the practice. You feel it's like it's in the walls. And so I guess I'm very protective of it like that.
100%, definitely. I can tell you it's working, because when you do come up those steps towards the studio, there is, that incense smell in the air, and it's like, I'm home. Yeah. It's really lovely.
Yeah. It's a bit of I'd like for me, and I'm trying to, with yoga's always instilled a certain feeling in me, and I'm trying to give that to other people, I guess. And so I get the same. I walk up the stairs and I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. And some days, like, how it is, some days I do the admin from home, and I'm at home thinking, I'd love to just teach from home today. But I get in, and it's always, and if I come in a bit of a crank, I never leave in a bit of a crank. Yoga is such a joyful practice. It's such a wonderful thing to share with people.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And I think, while we've certainly highlighted the strength of the community and how people have come back for years, again, speaking as a newcomer, coming to it, the doors were wide open for new people to come, and for it to be a welcoming and open space for people to join. And, there's a lot of different offerings out there now in Dublin. As you say, yoga has grown. And I remember, going back and looking at all those different offerings and not knowing really where to start. Where do you find a good match to you? What do you look out for? So if someone is new to yoga or returning after a long time from practice, and if you're listening today, hello and welcome, and they're searching for a yoga teacher or a studio to practice with, what suggestions do you have for them? Barring the obvious answer to just come to Samadhi, of course.
Well, of course, yeah, but let's widen it out, because not everyone is in the sort of Dublin 2, Dublin 8, Dublin 1 area. Though saying that, we do get people, especially on a Saturday, people will travel in to come to a class. I've someone flying in from America on Friday morning to do yoga. How crazy is that? But that's kind of the wonder of Zoom as well. This is someone who's been Zooming us for the last 2 years, having met me when I teach in the States. And so someone who, I would say, firstly, let's look at someone who has perhaps taken the last two plus years off because of COVID and all of that. I wouldn't rule out Zoom. I think Zoom can be done well. I think that you can get a lot out of it. If you have a good teacher who is not afraid of technology and has a good kit, they need to be able to see you. Don't waste your time with your camera turned off. Turn on your camera and tell them your name. If you have any issues, tell them if you have a dodgy knee or anything, tell them in advance so they can work with you. If you're living in the wilds and you can't get to a yoga class, convenience is a big thing, let's face it. So something that you can realistically, we're all too busy these days. So a class that you can make week in, week out, and then do make it week in, week out, because it's a commitment doing yoga. It's not a class, it's a practice that you do on a weekly basis with a teacher, and then ideally you do some yourself. I always think of going to a yoga class more like going to a French class. It's not about the French class, it's about going to France and speaking French. And so doing some on your own really dials up the potency of the practice. Even if it's just a dog, if that's all you can remember. And if you can't do anything else, you probably can, you're just nervous too. You won't break yourself doing yoga. Unless maybe you're doing a headstand and you fall over it. But you won't break yourself doing warrior poses or sitting poses or breathing or shavasana. It has yet to kill anyone. Then I think find it, look them up. A lot of teachers these days have a bit of YouTube. You could look them up. If they have a voice that goes through your ears, that's going to be problematic, isn't it? But there'll be someone out there for you. So I would say do a little bit of shopping around. In the same way, if you are, if you're interested in doing yoga, chances are you're going to enjoy it if you find the right fit. So it's worth doing a little bit of shopping around to find the right fit. I would say don't necessarily go for the cheapest option, because the cheapest option is not always the best option. If you think of it in terms of going for dinner, is the cheapest meal going to be the best meal? Not necessarily. And don't judge it on one class. Like if you go and the teacher just drives you mad, well, get the heck out. But don't judge the whole practice on one class. I know in my classes, I tend to sort of work on themes and areas. And so you might come to a class where it's all supine stuff and you think that's so mellow. And then you come back the next week and it's all inversions or back bends and you think that.
I don't think you need to worry about being known for being mellow, Greg.
I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. But that'd be my advice. That was long-winded, but could we recap? Convenience, but it's not just about convenience. Mm-hmm. It's not about value. A thing with value, if you're struggling to pay for yoga, you could absolutely say to the teacher, I'm struggling to pay for this. And I'd be shocked if they didn't give you a concession. Yoga teachers generally, we're doing it as a vocation rather than a career. We're doing it because we believe in yoga and we love to see people getting it and getting a response from it. And stick with it.
Consistency.
Consistency. That's a beautiful word. Then someone who has never done yoga before, well, I think I covered it actually with both. Someone who has taken the time off, one other thing I would say is don't be shy to go back. I know with me, I think I used to be a bit harsher than I am. These days, if someone comes back, we're probably not hugging due to post-COVID, but maybe we are, but I am only chuffed to see them, that they want to come back. And I nearly celebrate their stiffness. That's just life. And it doesn't matter where you start. I remember doing my first teacher training and I was so often the stiffest in the room. And so often Elizabeth used to say, now come over to Greg and see how not to do the pose. Can you imagine? But I learned loads, but also it made me realize that it's not about the show. It doesn't matter how far you go. It's about what you get out of it as you go into it. And I'm very into alignment, but it's not alignment for its own sake. It's if I ground down into my big toe, what does that do? If I pull up on my kneecap, where does that touch? If I pull up on the outer versus the inner, do I feel the difference? Am I making it up? That is the curiosity for me, because yoga is about getting intimately in touch with your own body, having a very embodied experience. And so you're using all these yoga tools, because the old yoga books don't say anything about trikonasana or lifting the kneecaps or whatever. But these are all tools. Some of them have evolved in more recent times, but they're tools to get you out of the brain fluff and into an embodied experience.
Absolutely. And, as you say, every body is different and bodies change according to what we're going through in life. And it's been an incredibly tough 2 years for many people. But, you start somewhere, and maybe another year down the road, it's like you looking back or walking past your old studio and saying, you served me well. Our bodies serve us well at every point, and we just work with them.
Yeah, I agree. And as we go along, they start to change, and it's okay. It's not good or bad. It's just how it is. And I think yoga can really help you with that, because there's a comedy in yoga in a way. Like, we're never able to do everything, and some of the things we are trying to do, they're inherently ridiculous, and that's okay.
I'll hold you to that one. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Greg, and for being a willing participant in turning the tables and coming into the hot seat today. It's been an absolute privilege to pick your brain.
Well, it was really great to share some of these stories that people mostly don't want to hear, but to discuss yoga with you. Yeah.
And that's where we thank our listeners if you're still with us. Be sure to check back in for next week's Yoga Chats, and also follow us along on Instagram. We're at Samadhi Yogis to stay up to date. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, listeners.